Hey you guys, welcome back to our channel, Marriage and Medicine. So as you know, in healthcare, there is not much diversity at all. And so with that comes a lot of, I feel, racism. There can be a lot of prejudgment or just preconceived thoughts about a person. And so for this week's video, we wanted to kind of talk about that and just share some of the experiences that we've dealt with along this journey, or at least more so that you've dealt with in this journey, and just talk about like what that's been like, how to handle it, how to overcome it, and hopefully how to just not even get to that point in the first place.
Right, yeah. So the majority of the experiences that I've had and many other people probably have, they're probably like subtle. Like you don't really catch it until you think about it afterwards and you're like, that was kind of, I didn't like that. I didn't like the way that felt. So sometimes when the events occur, in the moment, you're like, you don't really respond to it. And then you kind of think back afterwards and you're like, man, I should have said that, or I should have stopped them from saying this or doing this to somebody else or something of that nature. Because again, in the short term, sometimes it's very subtle to where you don't really experience it as much in the moment. Other times it's just straight up blatant. And it's unfortunate in some of those situations because those are the situations where you just feel like you don't belong in some situations. Whether it's from a higher up, whether you're acting as a medical student or resident and you're getting it from the attending or something of that nature, it's difficult to deal with altogether. It's already hard enough just being in a space where you're not really seeing yourself and a lot of the other people that you're working with. And so it can be even worse when you're starting to feel that aloneness. When you get some of those comments, it can be difficult to deal with for sure.
And it's hard to, I feel like, get other people to understand how you feel or to relate to how you feel because they don't necessarily have the same experience.
Right.
So to them, it's like, because I haven't had to deal with it or experience it, it kind of almost doesn't exist. But
Right.
it's like, but if I'm on the other hand telling you, like, this is my reality, this is what I've had happen to me, you can't tell me that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So
Exactly.
it can be hard to get people to be like empathetic or understanding or try to put their selves in your shoes because you can't really do it when you haven't felt it, you haven't dealt with it or anything.
Right. And unfortunately, this starts, for me, undergrad, of course, you can still have some experiences, but from like in med school, I've had a couple experiences. One of them in particular, it thankfully wasn't like a faculty member or anything like that. I went on basically went to a conference where I was going to give a PowerPoint or a poster board presentation. I was part of a team with the orthopedic group that I was working with. And so there was all of the other individuals I was working with was white. And so it was down in Florida. We were going in to set up our poster board. I ended up having to stay behind because I had to grab something else. And so I went after the rest of the team went in. And so, of course, like when you go in, there's like somebody at the entrance of the auditorium that we were going into, basically kind of just, check in, making sure everybody who was supposed to be going in there was going in there. And so I go walking in there, have my badge on, I have a shirt and tie on, I look the part. And so I go walking in there and the guy just like, he stops me and he's like, oh, where are you going? Are you looking for something? I'm like, what do you mean am I looking for something? Like, what do you think I'm doing? I have my badge on, I'm going in here to give a presentation. He did not let me into the place until one of the people that were on my team came back and basically got me. It's like,
Yeah.
why is it like that? I'm like, I look the part, I have the badge on, like there's nothing else that you need in that instance. So it's like that was my first time going to a conference, first time giving this poster board presentation. I'm like nervous already, and it's like,
yeah, and I wasn't there.
Yeah, you weren't there, and so I'm like, now I got to deal with just like it's just ridiculous, unfortunately. Other times it's like very subtle. For example, like when I'm dealing with patients, sometimes I look young as it is, and so I always get you look too young to be a doctor. I get that all the time. But it's interesting the way that some people say it versus the way other people say it. Some people say it in like awe, like, oh man, you look so young. Like it's cool that I get a young doctor. And then you get other individuals, most of the time they're white, who may look at you and it's kind of like I don't want you to be my doctor. And it's kind of like yes, you're young, but it's also kind of like, I don't trust you because of what you look like. You kind of get those feelings, you get those vibes when you're kind of talking with certain people. And it can make it tough to kind of get past that at times to provide the best care. Because it's like, I already have a short period of time in emergency medicine to build a relationship with the patient. And so when it starts off with those kind of negative feelings, it can kind of be tough to basically like fully hear out the patient and really understand what's going on with them.
Yeah, and I would imagine, like, because obviously I'm not a doctor or in medicine, but I would imagine, like, you can kind of tell how somebody feels even if they don't necessarily say how they feel. Like, you can kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you get a feeling, like, somebody's facial expressions or their demeanor kind of says a lot more than what they say. Like, I mean, I don't know if y'all have to shake hands when you introduce yourself or whatever, but
COVID times.
Yeah, but like, you know, when you go in there and introduce yourself and, you know, you have somebody who like smiles or is like welcoming versus someone who is just kind of like stale face, like, oh.
Yeah, it's always interesting.
Oh, hi.
Right.
Good to see you. Like,
it's always interesting because when I go in initially, like, they don't really know who I am. Because sometimes I go in there while the nurses are still, you know, talking with them, getting them hooked up and all that kind of stuff. And so when I go in there, they may think I'm the tech, or they may think I'm one of the nurses or something like that. And then, so like, you see their face and it's like, it doesn't change, but then I say who I am, and then sometimes it's like a shift. It's kind of like their whole mood.
Oh.
Like,
okay.
I guess. All right. And so you definitely pick up on those kind of things, and it's like, it's one of those situations like, yep, I'm your doctor, so this is what you got. Like, get with it.
And even in those moments, like, you know, of course, when you go in, I'm sure the nurses do it too, but like, whoever goes in to talk to a patient for their first time, you usually introduce yourself. Like, I'm nurse so-and-so, or I'm doctor so-and-so, or whatever. However you introduce yourself. And so I know even like in the past, you've said there's been times like you've told someone, I'm Dr. Lynch, whatever, and then you come back or, you know, leave the room, whatever, and like at some point during their visit, the patient will be like, oh, you know, well, when's the doctor gonna come to see me? Or like, I didn't see the doctor today. Like, how am I getting discharged or whatever? And it's
annoying.
like,
my goodness.
What do you mean you didn't see the doctor? Like, he literally said Dr. So-and-so. Or like, at the very least, if you don't hear that, like, hospital staff wear badges. Like, I've seen nurses with badges on. It says RN or LPN or whatever, or doctors, MD, DO. So it's like, even if you didn't happen to hear the name or the title or whatever, like, you can clearly see. Or if you're like, I don't remember who this person is, ask them, like, hey, can you remind me what was your name or whatever? But it's just like, y'all.
Yeah, it's you
like saw the doctor already, but it's just kind of like, I can't believe that he would actually be the doctor. So like, he must be like, oh, he must just be like a resident or something, or like a student doctor. There has to be somebody above him who I'm still waiting to see, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's annoying. And I mean, other times it's also kind of like they don't want to give you your full respect. And example of that I see is, so on my badge I have TJ Lynch, like MD. It's like TJ Lynch, MD is basically what it says on it. And so it's like, sometimes I'll talk with the patient and I'll like, you know, get ready to leave the room and they're like, oh, thank you, TJ. I'm like, no, that's not it. No, it's like, give me the respect that I deserve. Call me Dr. Lynch like everybody else does. And so it's kind of like, those are like very subtle things that maybe people don't really think about. Other times maybe it's situations where they do it purposely for whatever malicious reason that they may have. But they're just kind of subtle jabs where it's like, so if I was white, like, does this happen to my white coworkers? And I can probably guarantee that's not the case. And so that's the unfortunate part about it.
And I've never, even as a patient myself, like, I've never felt comfortable enough with a doctor to be like, thank you, so-and-so. Like, thank you, Matthew.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Like, anybody who's in a position of authority or maybe like power over you in a given moment, a police officer, a lawyer, whoever, like I've never felt like that was okay to just call them by their first name. Like unless they specifically tell you like just call me whatever, I've never just taken it upon myself to do that because you're showing like your respect for their position or their power or authority. So it's just like, I don't know. That to me, I thought was just like, oh, you feel that comfortable to just be like, oh, thank you, TJ. Even if you're going to say TJ, which is still would be inappropriate, it's like you could at least say Dr. TJ, but I wouldn't even say that.
Yeah,
that's still not really that appropriate, but I'm like, maybe we need to change your stuff to just say Dr. Lynch
and leave it at that. Yeah, I thought about that after the fact. When it started happening way more than it should have, I'm like, yeah, it's probably time to switch that now.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, you don't also just deal with these kinds of things from like someone who doesn't look like you. There's even a few times where it comes from people who look like you.
Yeah, no, it's weird.
It's just like, what? Like you would think it would not be like that, but there's like a handful of times where you do have black patients who it's like you would think they would be happy to have someone that looks like them that might have a better understanding of things that they go through, but then they like make it more difficult for the doctor or make it more like, I don't know, just difficult for no reason. It's just like, why? It doesn't have to be this way. Like, I don't understand that at all.
That's happened a couple times too. And it's kind of like, I don't know if it's more so like they're just so used to always having white doctors that when they get something different, they're just like uncomfortable with that, which...
Or if they feel like that black doctors don't give the same level of care or have the same level of knowledge as white doctors do. Which is, again, it's like, you would think as being a black patient that you wouldn't feel that way, but unfortunately, like, you do get some people that just do that. I remember you said, like, a story about a lady that had did that and was like, I can't remember exactly, but she was just basically like, oh, well, when's my doctor coming in or something? I don't know. And it's just like, ma'am, like, I literally told you. And then she was like, well, I know they only gave me you because you're black.
Yes.
And I'm black or whatever. And it's like,
that's not how that works. Okay. Nobody knows what you are until we go in there and see you.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of get an idea by a name, but you don't know for sure until you come in to see the person. Like, there are white Jasmines. Like, my name doesn't necessarily mean that I'm black, but yeah, it's just like, you would think, like, you as a black person already know some of the struggles or difficulties or whatever that you face on a day-to-day basis, and especially in healthcare, because there's not many black physicians as it is. And so it's like, you would think in the moment when you finally do get someone that looks like you and that can, you know, have a better idea of what's going on, you would think that you would try not to make it difficult or try not to be, you know, whatever about it, but it's not always the case either.
Like I said earlier, some episodes can just be a little bit more blatant. There's been people that have said the N-word. There's been people that's called me the N-word, or staff or nurses, whoever it is. And most of the time it's clearly malicious in most situations. In the other situations, it's like part of the individual's regular vocabulary, it seems. It's kind of like it just rolls off the tongue like normal conversation. And it's like, no, that's not acceptable. And so it's kind of like one of those situations where it's like you have to be able to correct it in that moment. And sometimes it's very difficult to do because you get these belligerent patients sometimes who are just trying to hurl whatever negative words they can say at you. And in some of those situations, it's better to just walk away because most of the time you're not really going to get through those individuals.
I wonder, though, if, like, in those situations, if you have somebody who's, like, really blatantly just, like, disrespectful, like, not necessarily cursing, because, you know, you're going to get people who get mad and they just start cursing, but, like, throw out racial slurs or whatever other kind of slurs to people because they get upset. I wonder if you can kind of, depending on what their health issue is, if you can kind of just be like, denied care in a sense.
And you can. as long as the patient's not like intoxicated, or as long as the patient's not a harm to themselves, or like suicidal or homicidal, those kind of things. If a patient is in appropriate like mindset, and they're just making the choice to be rude and obnoxious and those kind of things, then there are instances where somebody can be discharged from the hospital due to that concern.
Yeah, because I've heard of, there's been times like where they can, I guess, ban a person from being able to come back to the hospital to get service because of like something like that, like being just really whatever, just all kinds of like racial slurs and this and that, and
Right.
to everybody that was taking care of them. And so they're like, after they were finished being taken care of, like, you know, okay, well, you are no longer allowed to come back to this specific hospital to be seen for care or whatever. But it's just like, in those situations, that makes it worse because as physicians or nurses or whoever, like, your job is to still take care of a person regardless of how they feel or what they say or what they think. Like, even if somebody comes in with a Confederate flag shirt or like, or you know, some kind of a slur on their shirt or a tattoo,
So many tattoos. Oh
whatever.
Yeah, I see all kind of Nazi tattoos.
Or they even say stuff to you like, your job is to still treat them with the same level of care that you would treat anybody else, like regardless of what they wear or what they might say or what they might believe or think about you, which is like, that's kind of like the harder part, is like, you're like, oh, I can't stand this person right now, but I have to kind of put all of that aside and just focus on their well-being and getting them better and making them feel better. And it's like, kind of like not, I don't know, not having bias towards the person, even though they have bias towards you.
Exactly. It's like, from our standpoint, we took an oath to care for these individuals, just like anybody else. They did not take that oath, so you can't really kind of compare yourself to how they are acting. You have to act in a different way, ultimately, which is definitely difficult. But I mean, ultimately, again, there are experiences that you're going to go through, especially if you're a person of color in medicine. Resources and things that you can do to try to help yourself out in some of these situations is, first off, get your group of people that you can go to and talk to these things about. Whether it's a group of friends, whether it's a faculty mentor that you have, whoever it may be, have somebody that you can kind of air these frustrations out with. Because if you don't, it's just going to build up, and it can definitely kind of get worse, and it can lead to burnout. It can lead to many other kind of mental health issues, and so definitely have somebody that you can talk to about it. And the next thing is understand that it's not right at all. And so if you have an ombudsman, or if you have like a director, program director, whoever it is that basically is the individual who is in charge of kind of making sure that you're doing well from a well-being standpoint, be sure to talk with them as well. Because if there's an ability or a situation where they can make some changes to where you can avoid certain situations, like if there's a coworker that is blatantly being racist or whatever towards you, then you can call that out, and there can be changes or adjustments that can be made, whether it's that individual needing to go to some kind of counseling, or whether or not they're just going to keep a closer eye just to kind of monitor, see if there's any worsening of symptoms or worsening of the events that are occurring. But there's many different options out there, but just make sure that you talk to somebody about it.
And also, like, make sure you report stuff that happens too, like whether it happened to you specifically or whether you saw it happen to somebody else, because that's another thing, is like, people will see a patient say something or do something, or they'll even see like another doctor or nurse or whoever that says it to another doctor or nurse, and they just sit there like nobody says anything. And it's like, I mean, number one, somebody should speak up in that moment anyway, but if nobody does, somebody should report it. Like, and if somebody does report it and they come back to you and say, hey, did you see blah, 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 or did you hear this or whatever, like, you need to speak up and be honest. I don't get the, like,
secrecy.
I didn't hear anything. That didn't happen. No, like, being scared of whatever, because then that keeps change, or like, it just keeps change from happening. basically, when you just act like, oh yeah, that didn't happen, I didn't hear anything, when you were standing right there. So even if it didn't happen to you and the person that it did happen to maybe didn't speak up for whatever reason, like, you should be the person that speaks up for them or speaks up when they can't to try to make a change happen.
Right. And pretty much every hospital system has like an anonymous reporting system. So there's options to be able to report those kind of things. And even if you don't want to put your name out there, again, you can do it anonymously. And it at least goes up to a higher level where people are going to actually look into it, and they have to report on it. And so, again, change can't be made if nobody is basically reporting those kind of things or paying attention to those kind of things.
So thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, of course, feel free to subscribe to our channel, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Marriage in Medicine, and we will see you in the next video.